Hi everyone. We wanted to give you an example of what it could look like when we put various pieces of effective vocabulary instruction together. I thought I would share an example of how my 8th grade Social Studies PLC works with vocabulary for the various units that we teach kids. Our PLC feels like there's four big pieces of effective vocabulary instruction. Piece number one is to make sure that we're really focused on the most essential vocabulary words, and we give kids a pretty short list. Piece number two is to have the kids' initial learning with that list of key essential vocabulary words be as interesting and engaging as possible to get them to really kind of start to buy into the learning process. Then the third piece is to make sure that we return to and practice those words throughout the unit. And then the fourth piece, when possible, we try to summatively assess student mastery of those words by having them use the words in context. So let's kind of walk through and take a look at what this looks like. The first piece is selecting that really essential vocabulary. And we know that in vocabulary instruction, less is more. We've really moved away from giving kids long lists of maybe 30 to 40 words for a unit and trying to really hone in on the most essential words for them to master. So we've gone from these long lists of all the possible words we might want them to know to a short list. And here's an example of what it looks like in 8th grade social studies. We have about 14 key vocabulary words for an 8-week unit on the Civil War. So in the past, I know I would have given probably a list of 30 some vocabulary words before I knew better. But now, if we really want kids to master these terms, we need to make sure that they have time to think about them, to really truly learn them, to apply them, to process them. So we can't do long lists. We have to really focus on what's most essential. Once we have our list, then we're going to be looking at, so how do we have the kids initially learn these words? And here, that providing choice and interest, again, is key so that the kids are thinking about these words as they define them. A typical thing that we do in our PLC is we give the kids a visual dictionary assignment, which I know lots of people do. And if you wanted to see this assignment at a slower pace, it's linked into the slideshow, which you can get to back in the class materials. But this is an assignment that all the kids get, and it's posted in Google Classroom as a slideshow. And on the second slide, they have their directions. They have some choice here because they have a couple of options to show their learning about key vocabulary for the unit. Their first option is to use a visual organizer, which is pretty much adapted from the Frayer model, which many of you would recognize, where they have to put the definition in their own words, they have to give an example, and then they have to provide a visual. The other option they have is to come up with a meme or find a meme that has the vocab word, the definition, and an image that helps to communicate the meaning of the word. And they can go back and forth between these two options for the various terms on the word wall. Then they get their visual dictionary assignment with the list of keywords they have to look up. They have their rubric, where you'll notice it's important they explain the word in their own words. They are accurate, and they have completely done the assignment. Then, basically, they just kind of add slides to the slideshow that they got in Google Classroom and create a slide for each of the terms. To add a little bit of interest and to put a little skin in the game for them, also for each unit, I have a vocab battle for breakfast where the kids turn in the assignment. I go through the assignments and I select what I think are the best graphic organizers or the memes for each vocab word. And I put that on our class word wall because we're going to be using that word wall as we progress through the unit. And if I choose their words, they're helping me out. So they get invited to a delicious, donuts and juice breakfast before school. And that has been pretty motivational. There are kids that don't want to do much other work, but they will do their word wall assignments because they want to see if they can win breakfast. So that's just an example of maybe try to how to introduce vocab in an engaging, interesting way for the kids. Here's some student work examples that from this last year. The one on nativism that you see to your left is a meme example. And you can kind of see on the right, they've done the visual organizer, but they've picked a really awesome visual with a cartoon to help explain what a monopoly is. Here are a couple other examples that I thought were really good. Again, kids are putting the terms in their own words, and they're using some good examples, and they've got some really nice visuals to really help kind of communicate what the word actually means. And last but not least, there's a Monopoly example again, but also this one on perspective is, I think, particularly interesting. She found a great image And this comes from a student who was really struggling to get started in the year, and she was not really engaging in work, but this is what started her kind of going. She got interested in this assignment. She liked the idea of visuals and being able to find memes, and that got her moving. And so it can be really kind of motivating for a lot of kids who normally would look at vocabulary and kind of go, nah, I'm not going to do it. So that's kind of the initial exposure, if you will, to the vocab words, and they have a chance to kind of think about what they mean. But then we don't leave it there. We revise and apply. That's part 3 throughout the unit. And so just kind of at various points in time, depending on how lessons are unfolding. I'll have the kids do what I call a warm up, other people call them bell ringers, using those vocabulary terms. And you can kind of see here, I'm using the concept circle strategy that's explained later on in our materials, where kids have to explain how these 4 words are connected. And they've already learned the 4 words in the visual dictionary. So this is just kind of calling back that information again and having them apply it. And they have some support because they are, of course, working with a partner. You can certainly play games to have them practice this vocabulary. I like Quizlet Live because they have to collaborate and talk to each other and work together. And a kid who maybe didn't quite understand the word the first time through will get it with the help of a student they're collaborating with. And last but not least, you can also have them just kind of take quizzes to see where they're at. Nothing wrong with doing a quiz, throughout the unit to make sure that these words are making sense to them. And obviously, if we use Google Forms or a platform like Socrative, we can get those results back right away. And we and the kids can see how they're doing with this vocabulary. So those are just a few ideas about how you might revisit and apply throughout the unit. And when possible, because it's not always possible, if you can do a summative assessment where the kids use the words in context to really show you that they've got it, that's really pretty powerful stuff. So in the Civil War unit, our summative doesn't really lend itself to this kind of work, but when we look at the late 1800s, we have an assessment that comes toward the end of that unit that does. Basically, the kids have to write an essay answering the question, was the time period from 1870 to 1900 more of a golden age or a gilded age? And as they explain their ideas, they have to correctly use and define at least 3 of the keywords that are listed here. So I have the kids highlight them so I can for sure see where they've used them in their essay, and that goes to a content score on the rubric for that essay. So that's just some different idea. That's an idea about how you might be able to try to see if the kids can use them summatively in context. So that's one example of how we might achieve vocabulary success by focusing on a really pretty small number of essential words, making sure that the kids' initial work to define those words is interesting and engaging, having chances to revisit and process the meanings of those words throughout the unit, and then finally, summatively coming through and using those words correctly and appropriately. Hope this makes sense, and thank you for listening.